Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, Tamara here. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Kathy Berra, the author of a book about her online dating life as an older woman. Thanks for joining me, Kathy.
Hi, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
Great. Yes, the book is called These Stories Are True, I Shit You Not, in asterisks, and it's a humorous look at online dating for the unsuspecting older human, and it's on Amazon.
Awesome. Yeah, and great title and great information, because I was in a Facebook group with older daters, and they seem to struggle and just like not get this new world.
It is definitely a new world, yes.
Yeah. So how'd you get started with the book, or back to dating, however you want to start the story to make sense?
So basically I have a 32-year-old son, and when I was a single mom for a long time, and so it was, quite a while ago, but when he went off to college, my friends decided to help me write a profile for online dating. And, I was really excited, and they helped me write it. And, I had a couple friends who actually got married on online matches. And what transpired after that was just a series of the most ridiculous stories. And, you're almost mortified because it's like, this is not happening to me. I was in my, early 50s, and you just can't believe it because you're thinking, okay, this is odd. This is a weird one, But then what happened was it was not every single date, of course, but it just was a series of these ridiculous situations. And I was working in Tyson's in D.C., in McLean, Virginia. And the woman that was in the office next to me, when I would come in and tell these stories, she would come into my office and sit there and listen to these stories. And she's like, "Oh my God, you have got to write a book. This is too freaking hilarious." And I would say, I'm mortified that this happened, that these things are happening to me. Is it just me? And again, it was just story after story. And then time passed, and then COVID came, and she said, "This is the perfect time to write that book. We're all sitting around, although I have horses, so I ride my horse. I was lucky to get outside and ride my horse a lot. So I thought, I have nothing to lose. So I just started putting together the stories, and she was so funny because she remembered a lot of the stories I didn't remember, and I blocked out sort of. And so she sent me this list, and I was like, "Oh my God, I forgot about that one," So, and it's a compilation of stories from myself and about all the names are changed, of course. But also from men, that when I would go on these, and they would tell me their stories about what the heck happened to them. So yeah, and it's just, it's had a life of its own. And I was, initially I released it over a Valentine's Day weekend. So I was on the radio a lot in Denver, just on these funny shows that, okay, here's a person talking about dating and blah, blah. So that really went well. And then the same person decided, she said, "Have you heard of Book Talk?" And I said, during COVID, I do know what TikTok was, because my friend always asked me to record her doing these goofy dances with her horse and all this. I'm like, I kind of know what that is. I wasn't really engaged in it. And then she recommended I get on TikTok to start passively promoting. And I used to work in TV. I'm not uncomfortable doing these little videos. But a couple of my videos, and in my book I have a whole chapter on scammers, because this guy tried to scam me. And that video, to this day, it's like a 7-second video, has over 1 million views, wow. Tens of thousands of comments. And so, and it's just been a study in the human condition. And, and I still, like with you, I'm talking about it because it's just a topic that is interesting, and it's also a modern day weird dynamic of how people actually date. So.
Yeah. And do you think there's a reason, or like what is the prevalent dynamic that's going on, or was going on when you were doing all this?
Well, because I'm older, although the book also, I touch on topics like there was a 27-year-old girl that I was at my barn, not a bar, barn in Colorado, in Denver. And she had been dating a guy for 2 years. And at dinner one night, he says, I think I want to break up. I'm going to go back to my husband. And she said, what did you say? What? She had no idea that he was bi and that he was married and that he was on, so for 2 years she dated this. So anyway, it's just the modern day and also the hookup culture and all that kind of weird stuff, the autonomy of being online and the swiping. And, one of the things I mention is that back in the day, in the 80s, they had that video dating, which was hysterical because, I'm Bob and I like walks on the beach, all that kind of funny stuff. But a friend of mine who's older than me said she met her husband through the personal ads. Back in the day, you actually got a newspaper, saw an ad, you had to write a letter, put it in the mail, put your phone number, wait for them to call you back. So that I think one of the things I really know is true is that the art of anticipation is dead. We have no anticipation, no waiting for someone, no, it's just like swipe, 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 and it's just become so impersonal in a lot of ways. I don't know if there's a running theme in it, but I do know the ghosting is real for everybody, and which I find to be almost juvenile in a way for older men to do that. Although I think older women do it too, but yeah, it's just become real autonomous and I think just impersonal, and people don't care, they don't care and they don't have to care because they're behind a screen,
Yeah.
So.
Well, it also seems like they want to care, but they're been jaded and bitter and hurt that everyone's just kind of gave up and like assumes the worst about the whole thing. So everyone's just reacting like it's the worst thing. And
well, I've had men also that find out that I wrote this book, and I had one guy, I talked to him probably for a week or so, we were going to get ready to go do something together, and then I told him about the book, and he wrote me, he says, I don't want to be the next chapter. I'm like, well, then don't make yourself the next chapter, So now he's also a comment that I'm making, because that happened. But, and I'm not negative about it at all. I just find it to be so comical, like, oh my God, what the heck are we doing in this world? What are we doing? And, one of my chapters talks about these guys who, and I was at the advent of all the online, like the really beginning of Match and all that kind of stuff. And just the fact that now, it's like a Hallmark card. They send you a, dick pic. Here I am. Here's what I've got. And it's almost like, what are you doing? Like, am I shopping for, it's comical, but it's also like, what in the world? So yeah, it's just a funny kind of world that we live in with regard to, and I think it's also kind of sad because one of the chapter on the scammers, it started out really funny because all these women, basically these guys, and everyone knows this, because I think it's a $1.3 billion industry, the scamming, but they target older women, widows, things like that. And I had, 5,000 comments about the script they use. I'm in the military. I'm on a boat in the middle of the ocean. We just got attacked. I have a kid that lives with my parents, and my wife died in a tragic accident, and I need iTunes cards so I can keep talking to you. And people fall for it. But then it got to a point where all these women and men were responding saying, oh, I got scammed for $30,000 or I got scammed for 10, I didn't get scammed. I caught it really fast. Yeah. But it's just really kind of that's the sad part of it, Yeah. The more I looked into that, of course, we see it all the time now. These guys in Nigeria, in the little call centers,
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually heard they were like held hostage as in call centers, and it's in other, like a lot of other countries now too. And they just try to get them to seduce people online. Like it starts with, they use WhatsApp a lot too, or those kind of.
Yes. And they ask you to get off of the main app to, but one of the things that was so funny is this woman, one of the comments was, I have heard the same story so many times. She said the next time one of these guys says this, I'm going to tell him that they should all start a support group because all of them have lost a wife in a tragic accident. But I mean, you have to, use levity about it, but I do feel sorry. I mean, I've had a couple friends, not my friends, but like sisters of friends who have been, ripped off, and they just, although I don't really understand the concept, and that's another thing about the psychology of all this, right? How anyone can believe somebody that they've never met in person, they've never seen literally physically on a FaceTime or something, they just have seen the pictures, and send them money, blindly send them money. Now, the guy that was trying to scam me, sadly, I found out had used the pictures on his profile that I was seeing from a military obituary site. He had pulled all these pictures into a profile. And of course, in Northern Virginia, everyone's military, or there's a ton of military. So I thought, oh, well, he's at Fort Belvoir, Then 2 weeks later, he's in Afghanistan taking a hot bath after training. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense, So, I caught on really fast, but it's just a modern day weird, sad thing for a lot of people that they prey on, but you have to, like I said, you have to keep a sense of humor, and these people that respond are, oh my God, they're just so funny, because it's, and then of course you have how many Johnny Depps have tried to friend you, and how many Jason Momoas, oh, I love you, you're so beautiful. And then, so, we all kind of know now, but a lot of older people don't. So.
Yeah. And like 4-star generals too, like you're saying, military. So like try to friend you.
Yes.
But yeah, so what are some, like, what's one of the funniest, like what, like categories of funny? Are they like just like weird, or are they like, they're just like bad daters, or like some like manners, or like what kind are their categories of funniness?
Oh God. Well, men that don't stop talking about their ex-wives, of course. And then you're like, oh my God, shut up. Men who won't leave. I have a chapter in there about a guy who, I was at my barn. He was a horse person. He wanted to come see my horse. I couldn't get him to leave. It was like 6 hours later. And all my friends were trying to help me to get him, to leave. People that just, I had one guy here. It was a funny story. It's called Cairo Johnson in my book. And I met him. He was a chiropractor. And, one day, it was, I don't know, a week or so after I met him, he kept sending me on this one day pictures of things with 8 in it. And I thought, am I missing a holiday? Like, is it a holiday? Like he put, he did a screenshot of, it was November 8th or something. And then he sent me something else with 8. I'm like, what? I said, am I missing a holiday? He's like, no, that's how big I am. I'm like, oh my God, but he was on his way. The sad thing about that one is that he was on his way to his grandson's house to help him put together a Thomas the Train bed. And he's telling me that. In the meantime, he's sending me these pictures. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So, that kind of thing. And then I had, just inappropriate, weird stories that they told me. There's one in here about this guy that told me, I don't even know, it's so inappropriate. And I tell people it's the worst story I have. And it's about him telling me this girl he dated got really drunk and tried to, when they were leaving the restaurant, she tried to, hump the, stick shift and all that. It's like, why would you tell me that on a date? Why? So it's that kind of thing. And you're just sitting there going, what? So again, you just have to back away and say, good God, but I think that's if there's a theme in all this, it's just the stories that I've been told by others. And there was another who was a college professor who told me a story about a woman he dated for, I think, about 4 months. So he thought they were kind of a thing. But this woman, I think she was a pharmacist, and she had been married 3 times already or something. She had 3 different kids by 3 different guys, whatever, and thought they were monogamous, and went to her house one day to surprise her. And now this is a story from him. So this happens to men too, right? And she said that he got to the house, and of course she didn't know he was coming. He had a thing of flowers. She opens the door, and she's in a cheerleading outfit. He's like, what's going on? And honestly, she was in there having a threesome with 2 of her ex-husbands. Okay. And,
Wow.
and I said, well, and they didn't invite you in? And he said, no, they didn't. It's But I mean, it's just that kind of stuff. You can't believe it. You just can't believe it. And that's the title of the book. These stories are true. I shit you not, because they happen, and it's not just you. I think that's the other thing I want people to understand is it is not just you that this happens, because I was really kind of mortified for a while, like, I mean, I can't imagine what my son thinks of this book, but it's you're not alone in the nuttiness is the other thing I want to make sure people understand,
Yeah. And I know this, obviously your book is about the bad stuff, but like you said, there are good ones out there. Would you say it was like 10% decent dates or 20%?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, I was divorced and I really wasn't sure what I was looking for during all this time. But even honest to God, there are good dates and they're not always nutty. Sometimes you just don't connect. And I still haven't really, I dated somebody for a while and it just didn't work out. And as you get older, you kind of, as independent women, we're kind of like, what's the benefit of the, and a companionship, of course, is great. But I think really the part that I don't know, I think is a good thing is that, you just have to keep practicing. And I love meeting people and hearing their stories. Of course, as a writer, I'm always like, that's a good chapter, and of course that's bad because then I'm going to turn it into a chapter. But, there's good stuff too. But, honest to God, I just literally 3 weeks ago, my cousin, she lost her husband last year and she convinced me to go on this Facebook dating. I thought, okay, I'm local. I'll just see what happens. And so I literally did. I went on a date 2 Fridays ago, 5 hours, sitting there talking. We texted all the next day. And then he said, well, let's have coffee on Sunday. I have never heard from him since. That's the kind of stuff I'm saying. It's like, it's just so odd. Like, I thought we connected pretty well. And I kind of reached out and I said, we're going to do the coffee. I didn't hear from him all day. And he said, sorry, I got busy today. And then I never heard from him again. So in reality, it's like, it's not worth the energy sometimes, when you think, even that was just a couple weeks ago. So I'm just kind of, this is why I hang out with my horses, So, I ride out in the countryside and I do my thing and I write my books and, it's, it's hard for women, I think, too, because a lot of us are independent. And, of course, coming from an older generation, I have a comment in the book that one of my friends made. Nowadays, he said, you get yelled at if you don't open the door for women, and you get yelled at if you do open the door for women. So it's confusing for men, too, I think, and I don't know. Our roles are so mixed up now. It's just really hard for us to kind of decipher what we really want and what we're willing to compromise.
Yeah. And have you heard of Burned Haystack at all?
Mm-mm. No.
It's a Facebook group and she has Instagram as well, but she kind of deciphers the wording of profiles to help you understand like what they really mean when they say stuff, so you can burn the stack to get to your needle.
Right.
And some people say, I mean, it's definitely good, but then it kind of turns almost into like anti-men-ish thing. But I mean, she's a professor who does like linguistic stuff. So she can literally like decipher.
Interesting.
And then she's writing a book and she has, it's grown into a huge following in articles and stuff.
I'll have to look that up. No. And again, the one thing that, I don't know if there's a phrase that you see that you're like, oh my God, but the one for me is, no drama. I'm thinking, life is drama. What are you talking? And when men say that, it's just swipe. Because it's a phrase that you can't. I don't know. That one really bothers me.
I think she would say that's like him not wanting to be challenged. Yeah,
right.
It's like it's my way or the highway.
Yep.
So like I don't want to hear it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think. It's just really a study. It's been a study in the human condition. And so I'm still on TikTok. I'm writing another book. I wrote a poetry book also, so that's on my Amazon. And my website's catherinebarra.com. But that book is also a humor book, and it's a tough one to write because it's about the irony and humor in the before, during, and after of death. And that came about when my father was dying, and just a weird, crazy, bizarre stuff. Death is tragic. I lost someone I loved dearly I was madly in love with him 20 years ago, and to cancer. And you have to find the good in it, the positive, what happened since then. And I think that situation taught me, always tell people you love them. Who cares? Like, what do you got to lose? Nothing. But yeah, it's human beings are crazy, the crazy creatures, man. We are nutty.
Yeah, definitely. And I have an episode about that too, like the grief of that. It's not out yet. It's coming out, but yeah, she said it's like it's basically trauma, or can be. And you have to actually, she says a 5-step process to help you get to the other side. Most people kind of stay at level 3, she says, where it's good enough. But,
Yeah, I heard a really interesting analogy. Someone said grief is like a box with a big red ball in it. And over time, the ball takes up all the space. But over time, the ball loses some of its air, and so when it bounces around, it's not so suffocating. It just kind of gets smaller, but it's still there, And I thought, oh, that's an interesting way to look at that. Because, it's true. And I think that's the other thing about dating. You are so tentative a lot of times, because if you've been burned, or if you've been cheated on, or if you have been ghosted or whatever, and I keep seeing all these weird videos of these women who their husbands have a Tinder on the side, and they're meeting with, and I'm thinking, I can't even get one good date, and these people are out there, dating other, I don't know. Yeah. It's a crazy world, so we just have to look at it and step back and say, oh my Lord. So I almost did do a sequel to this dating book based on all the comments from the people about the scammer. I'm trying to put that together, because it's just like, oh my Lord. But, life gets in the way sometimes. So, but yeah, that's, why I wrote the book. And, I think it's turned out pretty well. And I still, I'm still on there doing videos about it, because I just keep getting comments and stories from people, and that they can relate. And so it's all good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your social media stuff for TikTok? Is it the same, your first and last name? Or
TikTok is Catherine R. Author. And then I don't do much on Instagram with my book, but I have my website is Catherine, CATHERINE, Berra, BERRA, .com. And that has, a link to all my socials, and then also the podcasts, I do, so people can listen to those and see those, because, I love talking to people about this, because we're all in it together, shall we say. So, yeah.
Because the big thing for my podcast is just reading books. Like, I've read all the, the dating, like Logan Ury, she's the kind of like matchmaker or expert on Hinge, but she also has the book How to Not Die Alone, which I thought was really helpful. And like you said, it's definitely about practice and going into it, not like, you can't help but be a little jaded, but if both people could actually not be jaded.
I was talking to a friend I knew in New York when I was writing it, and she said, oh, my friend Lori Graff wrote a book about all that in the 90s. I said, what? So I contacted Lori, and she's like, because she did all this dating stuff before any social media existed. So it was more like the ads and the video thing. But she wrote an entire book called You Have to Kiss a Lot of Frogs. So I talked to her and was telling her about my book, and she gave me an endorsement on the back of my book. And she's like, it's just never-ending nuttiness, no matter what avenue you go down to, participate. It is crazy. So I thought that was pretty ironic, that I had a friend who wrote a book, years ago about the same thing. So, yeah.
And unfortunately the same.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worse now. I hate to say that, but I just think it's just so easy to, have 35 swipes in a day, and, instead of one ad that you've sent in the mail that, waiting anxiously. But I do think that's one of the things I've noticed about the dating world and the online apps and all that. There's zero need for anticipation, and I think that always added a little bit of hope and a little more effort on the part of everyone involved in a relationship. I mean, even back in the day when I was a kid, if a boy was going to call you, they had to call your home phone, and God forbid your dad answer the phone, because God, that's mortifying, or you're on the phone and your brother picks up the other end, so that was a whole different world too. But yeah, it's a crazy, crazy world.
Hi, Tamara here. Just wanted to break in and say, if something you're hearing is making you think of a friend who could use this information, feel free to forward it to them right now. They would probably really be grateful for that. Thank you so much. Bye. Yeah, especially the anticipation, like you said, if one doesn't reply, you just start with another person and then another person, and men do the same, of course, too. And then you never know if they're hitting it off with someone quicker,
right,
faster.
Right. And I think one of the other terms that people use nowadays for meeting someone, it's meeting someone organically, like through a friend or through your hobbies and things like that. And I've tried that too, but as an older person, and also as a woman that is independent and financially independent, it's like the needs for you are mostly companionship and somebody to share your life with. But there's, and one of the things I say in my book, you just have to be willing to say, okay, I have this big, huge wagon full of baggage, and I just need to be able to say, yes, I'm willing to have you walk beside me with your big, huge wagon full of baggage also, right? And then we'll just figure it all out when we get home, So, and again, the compromise part of it is big, and as you get older, it's just kind of like, so
the pros have to outweigh the cons.
To
even get started. Have you tried dating younger? Has that been?
I usually do, because I don't know, I just have a lot of energy, and again, that's the other thing right now, being I'm 62, so so I'm older, but a lot of people say, oh, you don't look 62. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, because I am. And usually if you do date younger, and one of the things I found so interesting is that a lot of younger men want to date older women, mainly for the sexual part of it, right? But this is from all my friends, I've talked about this, but older men want to date younger women because they don't, that, have you ever seen the movie Moonstruck, when she's like, why do men chase women? She's because they don't want to die. They don't want to admit that they're older and that they're going to die. Right. But I think the younger men want a more free sort of relationship, that they're not worried about the woman getting pregnant or, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then the older men want the younger women just for their egos and their, basically because they're not willing to admit and accept the fact that they're at this stage in their life, kind of, I mean, I did date guys who, I dated a guy who I asked on the profile if he had kids, and he had said no. Well, then I get to the date, and he says, oh, by the way, I do have a kid, but I didn't know about him until about a year ago because she never told me. Then I've had men say they have the 30-year-old, 20-year-old kids, and then they did the rebound marriage, and so they're in their 50s, and they have a 2-year-old. So it's like, oh, my God, what are you thinking, pal? So it's just all sorts of situations, all sorts of weird mixes of stuff that goes on. So, and I do think I have dated younger men, and they usually are younger. But at this point, I'm kind of looking someone for in the same age range. I mean, I'm in a very rural area here. I'm in Durango, Colorado. And I moved down here to get out of the big city. Like we were talking, I lived in the D.C. area for almost 20 years. And now I just kind of hang out with my horses, and I work at a little radio station here. And so I like to travel. I think that's the one thing I would say that is a big plus for me if someone does that. But otherwise, I don't know. What about you? Are you on any apps or?
I was. I mean, I have a boyfriend now who moved in 6 months ago.
Okay.
So yeah, but But yeah, I was definitely on all the apps,
Yeah.
read all the books, talked about it all the time. And then we talked about stand-up comedy too. I
Yep.
used to do that, and I was newly dating at the time, so all of my stand-up was like kind of like your book, all the dating that was
Yep.
going on and all the stories and the stuff. And
Yep. And the stories are endless. I mean, you think, like I said, ever since I wrote this, I could give you a whole stand-up routine. I mean, it's like, you think yours are bad. And that's what I do on TikTok too. It's like, you think, I thought my stories were bad and crazy. And then you hear other people's stories and you're like, oh my God. So, we're just nutty. The human beings are just nutty creatures. And I think too, it's a different world with social media because we're just inundated nonstop. And I think that's the other thing I was talking to someone about the other day and I think it's been purposeful with social media, but our attention spans are so diminished from social media. Like everyone is getting stories and they're 10 seconds long or 20 seconds long, and that's what we consume in our brains. So the concept of a long, what do you call, what was it even called? Just like, dating and trying to do that couple weeks of let's see how it goes, or months even, is now diminished to like 2 days. So if you don't, and it's an instant. Although there's that book, what is it called, 5-second rule, or is that tipping point or something, where it's like a 5-second. You can assess something in 5 seconds, based on your environmental history and your life and what you perceive. So you see somebody in 5 seconds, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Although I just had an interview with someone it took him like 10 dates to, well, actually the very first date, they were both neutral, but they talked about on the phone, like, yeah, I'm like kind of neutral. Like, I'm not sure what I think. But then they talked for 5 hours. And then by the 10th date, then they kissed, and then it was like more to sparks. So I think there's hope out there. It's not all terrible. I do think like an idea for your book, because of the burned haystack, if you read that and compare some of your stories, you can see like the thread of how the what she talks about, the linguistic stuff of all those, the profiles, and might be interesting.
Absolutely. I think people have unlearned how to communicate face to face. In fact, I belong to a group here, and it's just a group about conversation. It's called Common Ground. It's just interesting. And one of the people at my table, it's basically a group. We're trying to learn how to have better conversations in this current world. And he's a professor at the local college here. And he said the most disturbing thing to him, and he's probably in his mid-30s, late 30s, is that this might have had something to do with COVID and the shutdowns and people just kind of not communicating for face-to-face. But he said the hardest thing he is dealing with, most difficult thing, is these younger kids that have no concept or have lost the concept of how to interact personally, how to interact face-to-face, have a conversation, talk on the phone, because all they're doing is texting, and they'll be sitting at the same table texting each other. So it's just bizarre. So I feel for the younger kids, because that all they know is the swiping and that sort of thing. So but that was a fascinating comment, because I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, when they come to class, and I say, well, you have to do, a presentation, and they just freeze, and they're mortified that they have to actually get up in front. Now, again, that might just be here, who knows? But I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. My friend brought her son, and then I brought my niece and nephew to an event, and I just assumed the 3 kids would talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that didn't happen. Like, my niece and nephew talked to themselves, and then they didn't even try or acknowledge each other.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate. But so, yeah, with regard to dating, I mean, this, like I said, this has been just an adventure, and it's been really fun in a lot of ways, other than the scamming thing where the people told me that they got scammed. It's just been a lot of fun. And I still, go on TikTok, and it's fun for me to do that. As an older person, it's just been interesting too, because I think I have 17,000 followers. I don't know. That doesn't really, I don't get on there and say, I want followers. I just want to engage with people that are in my same boat, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's people of all ages. So that's been a lot of fun. So
very cool. Yeah. I was going to say, do you have kind of final thoughts? But I guess that's kind of unless you want to see those as your final thoughts or
No,
closing
just that I would
comments.
just want to repeat the name of my book. It's These Stories Are True, I Shit You Not, a humorous look at online dating for the unsuspecting older human. And again, it's on Amazon, and it's also on my website, catherinebarra.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
for your
Good luck, everybody.
stories.
Good luck out there. Make good choices.
Yes. And if you love this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and read it as well. And thank you again, Kathy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Frank Talk, sex and dating educates.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to point out that there is a send us a text message at the very beginning of the description, and you can use that to send an anonymous question or comment. So I'd really appreciate it. All right. Thanks.